up to these days?
Well, so I'm running a new fund in the neuroscience, mental health, brain health and wellness, and human flourishing space called Satori Neuro, which really leverages all of the things that I've been doing for the last 2 decades, and it's kind of the culmination of that work. So raising the fund now, as well as deploying capital, just sort of out here and putting things to work.
Well, you're very brave. I mean, I think working for DARPA back in the day, the idea that you have to go out and raise your own money must feel a little awkward, but...
Well, I do, I'm so passionate about this space. And the one thing that starting out my career at DARPA did was kind of give me that real mission-driven focus.
Yeah.
And so it's actually, yes, it's always hard to ask people for money, but it's actually a real privilege to be able to do it for such kind of an area that needs so much support. And within the neuroscience community, within the mental health community, there's so much work to do. It's not like we don't have capital to deploy, right? There are many things to work on,
So what part of the 3 or 4 things that you mentioned that you're focusing on is resonating the most with potential funders?
So there are 2 things, I would say. One is access to care. So as we've looked at the mental health ecosystem, as we looked at the new therapeutics that are coming out, devices, drugs, all the great stuff that's happening, there's a clear gap in how the care is being delivered to individuals and how people are going to get access to that care. So I think people are really motivated around what's the infrastructure? Like what does it look like? Is it novel insurance mechanisms? Is it telehealth, teletherapy? Like what's the role for all of these pieces in kind of making the ecosystem flourish? I would also say, two more things. One is, of course, what's happening in the neurostimulation space. I think people are very excited around the potential for non-drug applications in the mental health space. I think we've seen a lot of there's a lot of great stuff happening, but there's also need for more tools in the toolbox, as I call it. And so neurostimulation is really exciting people. And then, of course, what's happening in psychedelic medicine. So
let's go back to the neurostimulation for a minute. So there are different parts of the brain engaged in different aspects of mental illness.
Yep.
How do you identify the place to target?
Right.
Is it about targeting in a place, or is it about identifying a pathway? Like, how do you think?
Yeah, so I think about it in a couple different ways. One is that we're definitely building up what I would call the sort of network, systems level network understanding of the brain, right? When I started out in neuroscience, it was very much a reductionist kind of world, right? Oh, if we just fix the synapses, everything will be fine, And we already know that's not true, right? And so what we've now discovered is through, EEG and fMRI, we've started to uncover some of the networks in the brain that are actually involved in it. So I would say we have some understanding at the network level, and then the role of precision psychiatry or precision neuroscience, figuring out for an individual, right, what's wrong in their network. And, we have some notion of the targets, but there's actually multiple nodes in those networks, and what's the right one to go after. With all of this stuff, there's no one answer for everybody. Every brain is a little bit different. And so there will be people who will be responders to neurostimulation. There will be people who won't be responders. Right. And knowing that and trying to know those things up front is really critical.
So, matching a patient to the SSRI that's going to transform their lives is a process that's, kind of basically hit or miss, right?
It's
like
kind of
1 in 3 chance of getting it. And I don't know how many patients go through multiple drugs without
Treatment-resistant depression is typically failing 3 medications or more, which sounds horrific, right? So I've actually seen some technology. So in that precision psychiatry and biomarker space, I've actually seen individuals who are working on digital tools that actually allow someone to do a really quick assessment, just using, not even using brain scans, just using some behavioral measures, maybe some voice measures, things like that, and actually predicting which pharmaceutical might be best suited for
voice
them.
measures,
Yeah.
literally, like
Yeah.
the tremulousness of your
Yeah,
voice,
yeah,
or the
yeah.
amount of
And the words you use and things like
Wow.
that. Yeah, it's pretty cool. The way that we're using multimodal biomarkers right now, in addition to all the good stuff, right? In addition to that, the neuroscientist in me loves the fMRI, loves the EEG, loves as much data as possible. The investor in me actually is really looking for the thing that's most scalable.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's the dance that I think we're running now in some of these areas.
So, good question. Are psychedelics scalable?
Are psychedelics scalable? So I would say they're, at the moment, not. But there are many folks, companies, other folks in the network that are actually trying to make it scalable. And so I think that involves, again, access to care, how are clinics going to be set up, where are we going to do this therapy, having enough therapists, therapist training, who are the right folks to be in the room long term, access to care. We're guessing that insurance probably isn't going to cover this right out of the gate, right? So what does that look like? Is that an employer benefit? Is that something else? So I would say I do believe it is scalable, and that's why we need to work on the ecosystem to put all the pieces in place to make that happen.
So what are some of the companies you've invested in that you're most excited about?
So a couple of the companies that I've invested in and I'm most excited about, one is Apollo Neuroscience, Apollo Neuro. It's using sound vibration to actually modulate the nervous system. So, it's either worn on your wrist, you can wear it on your body. The cool thing is that it's not only sort of modulating you sort of open loop, but they've now developed what they call their smart vibes, which can actually track when you wake up at night and actually turn on in the middle of the night to help get you back to sleep.
No way!
Yes.
Oh, you're going to sell gazillions of these.
I hope so.
Wow.
Hope so. Yeah, so that's really cool. This is the first time for me. So I've been working in the sleep space for a really long time, again, back to my DARPA days. And the funny thing about sleep is like we all have the trackers. Right. I got all the trackers, but they kind of just tell you had a bad night's sleep and then, so sorry. Try again. Amy, try again tomorrow. I was like, I'll try again tomorrow. This is the first time I think we're getting into that closed loop space where we're actually going to be able to modulate sleep.
So it's a bracelet?
It's a wristband. You can unclip it. You can clip it to other parts. Typically when we sleep, I put it on my ankle when I sleep. It's super cool.
Okay, so you have it now. It's available now.
Oh, absolutely.
Where can you get it?
You can get it online at
Apollo Ventures,
ApolloNeuro.com. Yeah.
Tonight, I am signing up tonight. Okay, that's exciting. What else?
So another one is a company called Feel Therapeutics, which has developed, you'll notice a theme here of real time. So they have developed a real-time biomarker for measuring emotional state changes. And so they are actually working with pharmaceutical companies because, as you well know, most pharmaceutical companies are working with qualitative measures, the PHQ-9, the MADRS scale, the whatever, right? And not actually being able to track patients in their clinical trials in real time. They have actually figured out a way, again, using a very simple wearable, and eventually all these things will merge with, the platforms as they were, but as you know, they don't let you in right away, right? So they've developed a really simple wearable that tracks all those things in real time. They've actually integrated it into phase 3 and later clinical trials and shown that they can actually detect mood changes in individuals before the individual can sort of detect it and therefore intervene. So for example, there's a pharmaceutical that's out now where individual takes it for 2 weeks and it lasts for maybe 6 months, maybe 9 months, maybe 12 months, we don't know, right? That's not known yet because we don't have a big enough population. And so they can actually track how long it takes for that person to maybe start drifting, and then they can actually be redosed well before they slide back into a major depressive disorder or something like that. So yeah, super cool. So you'll see a little bit from me, interest in the mental health space, interest in platforms, interest in real-time interventions, the work that we've been doing, of course, in the psychedelic medicine space as well, both in terms of molecules that are, I call them the traditional molecules, as well as the novel chemical entities that people are developing. It's a very exciting space.
So I guess to wrap it up, we're in a golden age of neuroscience, clearly.
Finally.
Yeah.
Finally.
I know there was the AI winter and there was the neuroscience winter too. Right?
Yeah. It was a tough go for a bit there.
Yeah. What did you think when you first started studying and Did you ever imagine you would be doing what you're doing now?
No, I could not have imagined, because I didn't know what it was. No, I mean, we weren't at that space, right? Like, in terms of, so even when I left DARPA, right, as a program manager, there was no neurotechnology industry for me to go to, right? We had little nascent bubbles and bits and things that were, the government was still funding. The majority of the funding was coming from the government. And so, we really, I think, the infusion of capital into this space has helped, make the neurotechnology industry certainly what it is today. So for me, BrainMind is like the Super Bowl, right? It is all of the pieces, all of the elements coming together. It's certainly my favorite neuroscience conference, not only like of all time, but just, in my year. And that's because of the community that the BrainMind is able to bring together, investors, entrepreneurs, philanthropy, all of those pieces. It is literally the only place where all of those people come together and interact with each other in a really authentic way. And that's why I love BrainMind.